Hello and welcome to the Collecting Heroes podcast. I'm your host JD, the collector of collectors, and this is the podcast where I talk to pop culture collectors from around the world. And when I say pop today, I really mean it. Funko Pop, that is, because my next guest, his name is Paul. He is from England and he is a Funko Pop collector. Paul, thank you for being on the show.
Hi JD, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, my pleasure. And thank you for doing that intro again with me because for people listening at home, this is the magic of podcasting, is that we actually get a bit of a do-over with recording sometimes. After having some technical difficulties, we're back for a second go after already doing a few minutes of the episode. But let's quickly fast forward through where we were in the conversation. First off, I spoke about the fact that I've been following your page for a while. I know you have quite the impressive collection. I asked you about an estimate of the size of your collection. You said around 1,000 or more Funko Pops, and I know that that's probably that's just what you've put into your database. Is that what you were saying as well?
Yeah, and that's just Funko as well. So yeah, I think a total piece count within my collection, and possibly maybe 1,500, 1,600.
Wow.
But Funko alone, it's probably just around about 1,000, maybe just over 1,000.
It's definitely decent. And as I said to you earlier as well, the reels watching you as you've been setting up your new fan cave, I usually call it on the show. I've seen them stacked up against the wall, and they were about 6 foot high and as wide as the wall. It was really impressive to see. But again, I'll just get you to recount the story where we were in the middle of when we had to unfortunately start again. But you were telling me the story of your first Funko Pop, where that came from and where the collection started. So if you don't mind, give me that story.
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah. So yeah, I think going back to kind of my early youth is that I've always been a massive geek. My earliest memories of toys are, always been things like Action Force and GI Joe and those kind of army based action figures. Used to
Yeah.
absolutely love them, and even growing into my really early teens, whereby some of my friends were starting to get into the more kind of the mid to adult kind of themed kind of things. I still had this almost a hard time adjusting to the fact that I was no longer a child and I was starting to become a man, and so that transition from letting my figures go and moving into adulthood was a challenging time for me. So then fast forward through back to 2015, 2014, Christmas of 2014, and I got a Rick Grimes pop vinyl from my brother for Christmas. Again, I'm a massive horror fan. I love The Walking Dead. I didn't know anything about Funko at that time. He got me this pop, and I just recognized it as was a small plastic figure that sat on my desk, and it brought me joy and happiness because it was a fandom that I enjoyed.
Yeah.
And that was it in regards to my Funko knowledge or collecting at that point. And then it was only about 6 months later when my wife went on a trip, I think, to London. She came back and she brought me back an Iron Man Age of Ultron pop as a gift. And at that point, I then had two. And as most Funko Pop collectors know, there's a kind of a Pringles element that goes on with pops of once you pop, you can't stop. And there was that kind of, I was looking at them on my desk and I was thinking, these are quite cool. I wonder what else they do. And, because again, I'm a massive film fan, I'm a massive cartoon fan. So, did a little bit of a Google, had a look around. I saw different fandoms that I thought, well, they look great. They look great. I'd like that. I'd like that. I'd like that. And then it just spiraled from there. I was spending all of my spare time buying pops and buying pops, and 6 to 7 years later, here I am now. I'm on iteration 3 of my collecting cave, and there's been a whole journey from that first Rick Grimes Funko Pop gift to where I am at now.
Wow, it's funny that you actually mention about that sitting on your desk, in your office, because for me, one of the first Funko Pops I ever saw before I even owned one was actually from, and I've actually got it on the shelf here. I'll show it to you, and I'll describe it for people listening. So here is the Impopster
Yep, the
Joker.
Loot Crate exclusive.
That's the one. That's the one. Loot Crate exclusive, and it was just happened to be someone who worked in the office that I was in at the time, that actually had this on their desk, and I was like blown away because I was already a big Batman fan. I saw it, I was like, where did that come from? They're like, oh, there's these boxes you can get, and they were telling me all about Loot Crate, and that was my first foray into seeing what a Funko Pop was, and I didn't even know it was a Funko Pop. I just knew it was this cool Joker
Exactly.
Batman.
Yep.
I didn't even know about the brand, and it wasn't till a few years later than that that I even got my first Funko Pop, and it again was one of my earliest ones was actually from another exclusive, and that was I think it's the DC Collectors one, which is the Batman versus Superman in the armor.
Oh yes.
I
Yep.
think from a
The
DC, one of the DC.
armored he's one of, yeah, I've got him. He's one of my favorites from the yeah, the DC collector's box.
Yes,
Yep.
yes, and he's also one
Yep.
of my favorites as well. And
Yep. Great
I
pop.
remember I was telling my girlfriend I really wanted that, and she got it for me for a Christmas present as well. So
Very lucky.
very similar trajectory there. But you also have quite the impressive Batman collection, quite a number of Funko Pops, a lot of Grails that I would love to have in my collection that I've seen within there as well. When you've been collecting, have you been buying everything as they come out, or are you someone who also seeks out and hunts some of those Grail items for yourself as well?
It's a really good question, and I think in my experience, because I've been collecting for, don't get me wrong, I'm not the longest collector out there. There's a lot of collectors who've been collecting back from day one. And
Hmm.
that is very much not me, but I've seen a lot in the time that I've been collecting. I've been admins on Funko groups. Obviously, I've had my page, so I've been exposed a lot to a lot of collectors. And I find that there is, not for all collectors, but for a big percentage of collectors, that there is sometimes a kind of a set kind of path that they follow. There's almost, when you start collecting, for a lot of people, there's almost this need, the Pokemon, I've got to get them all, got to get them all.
Hmm.
There's
Hmm.
kind of a need to have them all, and then eventually at a certain point, kind of the reality kicks in of, well, hang on, this is not really a sustainable thing, because
Yeah,
some of the, if you're maybe a Star Wars collector or a Marvel collector, the Harry Potter collector, the ranges are massive,
yeah,
with
yep.
10, 20 variants of each character.
Hmm.
So I think what you see is, with a lot of collectors, myself included, I started off very much with that scattergun approach of, I don't care what it is. If it's a Funko Pop, I've got to have it. If it's any kind of fandom that I remotely enjoy, I'm going to have it. And then you reach that point whereby you've grown that quickly, that big, and then you look at your bank balance and you think, wow, I'm spending a lot of money on all these things that I don't necessarily love. I like and I enjoy, but I don't love. And I think for me, there was probably a point, probably halfway through my collecting kind of life,
Yep.
whereby I kind of I hit a wall. And it was an assessment. And at that point, I think I sold off about 400 pops. I did this massive soul searching on, I need to know what I love. And what I love will stay in my collection. Everything that I don't love, then will go to someone who does love it. And now, from my point of view, everything that I buy now is very specifically chosen, because it's something that I either enjoy the aesthetic aspect of it, or it's a character that I know, or there's a nostalgia factor. So, because again, for most collectors, and they will tell you this, space and finances are the biggest two enemies of any collector.
Definitely. It's
So
something I've said plenty of times on this podcast, that space is the enemy.
exactly.
Yeah. And sometimes, space can be an enemy as much as your finance, or even if not more.
E-
I mean,
exactly.
you might have the budget to go out and buy 20 more pop vinyls, but if you've got nowhere to put them, it's kind of irrelevant.
Well, exactly, and if you're a, kind of a, just a collector who has no intention of going as big as myself or other collectors, and your collect, because this is one thing I say to people, because some people say, say to me on through my social media, oh, I'd love to have a collection like yours one day, and this, that, and the other, and I always try and bounce it back to them and say, well, it's not about the size. This is probably going to sound super cheesy and corny, but it's not about the size of the collection that you have. It is simply about the fact that you love what you collect. You
It's
can have
true.
one single yeah, exactly, you can have one single shelf with 10 pops on it, and if you love those pops, then you have a fantastic collection. It doesn't matter whether someone's got 1,000 pops or one pop. If, as long as you love what you collect, then you are a collector, and you're doing it right. Because people
Yeah.
kind of think that they have to have certain stickered pops, or they have to have certain rarity level pops to be deemed to be true collectors. And I think that's a load of rubbish. From my point of view, if you love what you collect, then you are a true collector.
Yeah, no, true, 100%. I couldn't say it any better. Definitely one of those things that I have also reiterated to people in comments online and everything. I've had people comment on my collection and say, that's so amazing. Same thing. I wish I could have a collection like that. I'm like, it all just starts with one item, and
Mhm.
that's any collection. It starts with one item and then it just goes from there. And exactly, it's one of those things that I would probably advise most people to try and keep your collection somewhat centered on a certain thing that you really love. Because, like you mentioned,
Absolutely.
when you were buying everything and everything, at some point it just became maybe too overwhelming, or maybe you just was like, I don't need all of this because even though I like that TV show or that character, I don't love them. I just bought it because I was just in the habit of buying things. It's almost and I as a former smoker, I definitely don't recommend that to anyone. There's a habit. It's about kicking a habit, right?
Yep.
And with buying and collecting, it can become a habit as well. So yeah.
It can, and I think if you look back at some of my earliest posts when I was still in my first cave, I had a whole section for Star Wars. I had section for Harry Potter. I had games, music, rocks, animation. I was dipping my toe into pretty much every Funko genre,
Hmm.
and it just was not sustainable. It just wasn't sustainable financially. It would have become a big problem. Then there's the mental health element of it, because as you say, it is a habit, it's an addiction. You find that you can get sucked into that whole, you spend your day preoccupied with, well, what's my latest pre-order? I've got 15 pre-orders with this company and 10 pre-orders with that company,
Mm.
and and the newest Comic Con pops are coming out, and I've got to be up at 5 o'clock to get them, and if I miss them, then I feel emotionally, that I've been battered. And it's so easy for me to say, but it's so hard for potentially for people to do. But
Hmm.
the best piece of advice that I could give is it's that stepping away, it's that disconnection of, you need to love what you collect, but
Hmm.
you can't love it to the degree that it impacts on your physical or mental health. It's the my mentality with everything that I collect is that these are bits of plastic. They're bits of plastic, and they are primarily designed to bring me pockets of joy. That is the way I view these. If my house burnt down tomorrow, I would make sure my family and my dogs are all safe.
Yep.
These are all things that can be replaced.
Yep.
These are all things, and if they can't be replaced, then they can't be replaced because one's rare. So what? It's a bit of plastic. Does it mean I love it any less? Well, no, absolutely not. It's part of something that I'm passionate about, and I've taken time and energy and finance to grow it. But ultimately it is just a bit of plastic. And that's, and sometimes when I say that to people, there can be a kind of a differing response, because it can be kind of like sacrilege. How dare you sacrilege Funko's name? It's more than just plastic. It's not.
It's
It's
not.
not, and it doesn't mean I don't love it. It's just about for me, my advice is just get the perspective right on kind of getting that life balance right when it comes to collecting, because as you say, it is a habit, and it can be a massive habit. And I see people all the time in Funko groups talking about, I was devastated and this that, and I'm like, devastated, there's such strong words to use. You're devastated
Hmm.
because you missed out on a pop. Okay, well, yeah, I might have been disappointed, but
Yeah.
am I devastated? you know uh, yeah, so for me, yeah, the key thing for me is that getting that perspective and getting that balance right between enjoying and being super passionate about what you do, but not letting it overrule and override your emotions.
Well, quick follow up question to what you just said. So, and I definitely don't wish this upon you, but worst case scenario, the house is burning down. You've gotten the wife and the kid out. You've gotten the dog out, and you have time to rush in and get one pop vinyl. Which one would you pick up?
Ooh, that is a very, very tough question, because again, because I collect a lot, because everything I collect in theory I love. It's not as easy to just say, well, I'm just going to run to that shelf. logic says that you run to probably the rarest piece and the piece that will probably would be the hardest to replace, whether it be financially. So because again, I've done posts on my Instagram where I have a little section whereby I've bought pops that remind me of my family. So, for example, I've got two dogs, and the dogs are little schnauzers, and I've got a Sprocket from Fraggle Rock and a Peabody, and they're perfect to me. They're perfect pop representations of my dogs.
Oh,
I've got a
cool.
little Oscar from Smith's Toys, and he again, he's a perfect representation of my son. And I've got a pop, which is, again, I've been waiting to find a pop that for me represents my wife the best. So in my mind, I've got a little family of pops which sit above my, my a little light sign that I've got.
Yeah.
And to me, they're the most important ones because they remind me of my family. But technically, they're all very easy to find pop. So it's a difficult balance of, yes, part of me is like, well, I'd get them because that's my pop family. But yeah, the reality, I'd probably go for Chrome Batman. all said and done, I would probably go for Pink Chrome Batman because he technically is he would
New
be
York Comic Con.
yeah, he
Yeah.
would be the most difficult one to replace because, as I say, the others, they probably have more sentimental value, but they would be very, very easy to go out tomorrow and pick up again. Picking up a Pink Chrome Batman probably would set me back another £400 to £500. So yeah, very much I'd probably get for him.
Well, that's good. I was gonna push you. I was gonna say, look, that was a very diplomatic answer, but you've got to pick one. So you
Yeah.
came out. You came out. That was good. Well, let's talk about the collecting cave because this is another thing I said I really wanted to talk to you about. I've been watching. I've been fascinated with for months now. You've been on this journey of remodeling your home and especially your collector cave. You said this is the third iteration of your collection as well. So you're in the process of setting that up at the moment. It's still incomplete. You've still got piles of pops that I can see in the background behind you that are waiting to get shuffled into that room. Tell me about what that process has been like. Has it been fun? Has it been a little bit stressful? What's it like?
Yeah, so starting back to kind of when I first started collecting, my kind of cave as such was simply just a spare bedroom in my old house, which had a couple of shelves put up on the wall, and then as the collection grew, a couple of shelves became a couple more shelves, a couple more shelves, and then before I knew it, I had pretty much one full wall dedicated with, I don't know, maybe 20 different shelves on it.
Hmm.
Not long after that, we moved house, and we were fortunate enough to move into a house that had more space than my old house. And because at that point it was just myself and my wife, we had no children. We were able to have I was able to have a dedicated room, which I then set up my cave in. So that was kind of cave version 2, and that was really enjoyable because at that point I didn't have as many collectibles, so it was nice to for the room to evolve as my collection evolved as well.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I initially started out with a certain amount of space and a certain amount of shelves, and then I'd pick up a couple more items, and I was like, right, okay, well, I can optimize this area. I'll put up a couple of shelves, and so the cave grew as my collection grew. We then, probably about 2 years ago now, decided to do some major renovations on the house, which involved a significant amount of work at the back of the house. And we decided at the time that we would utilize some space at the side of the house that was not really being used, and build a new dedicated room at the side of the house, thus freeing up my existing cave to become a home office because me and my wife work from home quite a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and that would then give me a dedicated space, which would be, thankfully, as well, twice as big as my existing space. So, so that's kind of how Cave 3.0 came along, and it's taken. We started the work in March, and it's just probably within the last 4 weeks being completed.
Hmm.
So I'm now at the it's a enjoyable slash stressful stage of now trying to dress the room, fill the room, because the challenge I now have is I now have effectively a blank canvas room, but I have a full collection of 16, 1700 items sitting in boxes
Yeah.
that I now need to redesign a whole room. So it's not like the old cave whereby as a new item was purchased, I could look at where I wanted it to go and I could put up a new shelf. I'm now in the position whereby I've got all these items and I now need to effectively window dress a shop, so to speak. So it's challenging. There's a lot more shelves that I need. There's a lot more units that I've had to go out and buy, and there's a lot of design ideas that I'm having to think. Right, well, where can I fit that in? How do I fit that in? How do I future proof so that I'm optimizing my space now? Because what I don't want to do is start putting up 50 shelves now that in 3 months' time I need to take them all down because I want to squeeze in another 5 shelves in a different area. I'm having to think about where my collection may go.
Yeah.
So again, that's why it comes back to what you said before, is having a very clear vision on what you want to collect, what lines you want to collect, what waves. So even going through this process now, as I'm going through, there's certain items that I'm looking at and I'm thinking, well, they're not going to fit my collection anymore. So I'm already starting to create a small pile of, they're not going to make the cut into the new cave, because ultimately I want to optimize space in certain areas, and to do that, basically these items won't work anymore. So it it's enjoyable. It's very, very enjoyable. Do I need an extra couple of hours in every single day? Absolutely. I still work full time. I still have a 4-year-old son, and I still like to try and have a life where I can have it. But I'll say trying to get that balance right, coming home from work after a long day, and trying to kind of find that motivation and the energy to do put up more shelves, and kind of think through kind of where am I going to open, where am I going to put these items, how am I going to,
Yeah.
so it's tough. It's tough. I think it's still going to take me probably another couple of weeks, I think, at least, to before I can even start to get all these pops. I've got about 1,000 pops right behind me right now, as you can see in shot, and they go back about 8 or 9 deep.
Wow.
And they all need to be unboxed at some point and put onto shelves, but I can't do that until I've got that room almost completely set up. And then it then becomes probably the most enjoyable part, which will literally just be filling the spaces.
And for the people
So it's
listening, just so they know that we're looking at behind you as well, I'm just doing a quick count. They're 8 high at the moment, and it looks like, I'm going to say 12, or actually maybe more wide, maybe closer to 15, 16 wide. It's like huge, huge. And then, yeah, as you said, multiple deep.
yeah.
it's it's quite the pile of pop vinyls. It's more than you would even see in the average retail store, really, on the shelves.
And I've had people say that to me as well, on through my social media. They're saying, where is your store? And I'm like, I'm not a store. I don't have a store. But again, I think because my style of display, it's it's about my own personal creativity. It's not
Yeah.
about, I see so many collectors and they go with the traditional shelf, 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 all in a
Yeah.
row. And that's great. And again, that's not me knocking it, because if that's something that's your personal style and you enjoy that, then that's brilliant. You do exactly what you love.
Hmm.
For me personally, I unbox all of my pops, I unbox all of my other collectibles, and I try and create as much visual interest within my collection as I can. So I try and incorporate props, artwork. I'll have my shelves at different levels. I'll have some bigger shelves with tiered stands. I'll have some smaller shelves.
Hmm.
And just so that when you look at the wall, there's a little bit of a kind of like, oh my God, there's a lot going on here. My eyes are drawn everywhere and everywhere. It
Yeah.
doesn't just feel like it's just a wall of pop, so to speak. Because whilst that is quite impressive, for me personally, yeah, I like that kind of almost the uniqueness of kind of just almost kind of it's almost like the chaos effect of just there's so much going on and you're drawn a little bit everywhere. It's almost like every time you look at the wall, you see something different.
Yeah. Actually, in one of your most recent reels, I saw that you had the Kallax 3x4, that you had in the
Yes.
middle of the room, where you were putting a lot of your Mandalorian stuff on there. You had the
Yep.
child figure. I'm not sure. I can't remember who does the child figure. Which company?
Hot Toys. That's a
The
Hot
Hot Toys one.
Toys.
That's right. Yep, the Hot Toys
Yep.
one. I was blanking for a second there, but you had the Hot Toys and you had some of the pop vinyls and things on there. And you were saying that I think that was going to be more Mandalorian focused in that section of the room. And then I think it looks like you've got a lot of the floating shelves, that the ones that screw on to the wall. Is that right?
Yeah. What I would say is, if I could be sponsored by IKEA, then that would be fantastic,
I'm
because
trying
I'd
that.
probably
I'm
say,
trying to do that. That's why I've just brought up the Kallax, because I'm just going to keep mentioning it. Last episode, anyone who listened to last episode, I did a big spiel on the history of the Kallax coming from the Expedite, which is sitting behind me, the original
yeah.
version of that the cube system. So yeah, I'm with you. Let's both get the IKEA.
Yeah, I'd probably say about 80% of everything that's in that room is IKEA. So I've got the large floating shells, which I just think are great, and then the smaller shells are they're actually the picture ledges that I turn upside down. And the reason why I turn them upside down is if you have them the way that they're supposed to be put in, then there's about a 1 inch lip at the front,
Yeah,
which then obscures. If you've got a 4 inch figure and you've got a 1 inch lip,
yeah,
you're obscuring 25% of your figure. So I turn them upside down, and they're the perfect depth for. If you're an inbox collector, it's a perfect depth for a single boxed item, and if you're an outer box, you can do two and stagger them to, and you can get about maybe 8 or 10 pops on a shelf, which looks great. So yeah, I've got Calaxes, I've got cases, and it just depends on what I want to achieve in each specific area. On my main pop wall, I wanted that to be again very much about shelving and variety and chaos. But on some of the other walls where I'm going to be putting in some of my horror figures, I just want that to be kind of a flat shelving system. So
yeah.
yeah, it's evolving. It's constantly evolving.
With your collection, would you say you lean more towards the horror versions of things, or is there a certain fandom that you're drawn towards that you, in most cases, that's something that you have to pick up?
Yeah, I think there is. I think I think, and again, that kind of culling that happened probably a couple about maybe 3 to 4 years ago. I think that was definitely the kind of the peak whereby my Star Wars went, my Harry Potter went, my Rocks went, my animation went, and my key fandoms now are very much, I would say, it's DC, predominantly Batman,
Yeah.
and Marvel, and then horror. Now, don't get me wrong, I like am a very much a child of the 80s. I was born in '78, and so I grew up with all the Thundercats and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and
Hmm, hmm.
so anything that kind of the throwback fandoms are great. All the A Team and Knight Rider, those classic kind of TV shows of the kind of 80s and
I went
90s,
through the
etc.
same thing. We're basically about the same age. Just for anyone listening, if they want to give away my age, we were born in the same year.
Yep. So yeah, yeah. Don't get me wrong. I think if Funko made more horror, then yeah, I'd probably be all over them like a rash. But again, equally, I think one thing that I again probably about 3.5, 4 years ago, I started to move from Funko, not move from Funko, but expand my collection from Funko, and
Yeah.
so now I have extensive NECA collector the collection, and
Hmm,
NECA again they do a lot of awesome 7 inch and 8 inch figures. A lot of them are very horror focused.
hmm.
And then McFarlane do some amazing DC figures.
Yes.
So yeah, my collection spans everything from Funko to NECA to McFarlane to Hot Toys to Iron Studio statues. It's not for me. It's not about the brand that I'm buying. It's just about what I'm buying. If it's something that I like the look of and it's within my certain budget, it will fit in my collection. It's what I want. Then I will look to bring it in.
Yeah, and I'm doing the same thing. I've got a statue which you can just see up behind me is actually from XM Studios. It's the premium item in my collection in terms of value, but I have obviously quite a number of Funko Pops. I also have statues which are harder for you to see behind me because they're not lit up at the moment. Some black and white statues. I've got Lego. I've got a lot of Lego, huge amount of Lego.
Mhm.
In fact, I'm actually in the process of trying to sell off some of my Lego collection because I had such a huge backlog of sets that I was like, I'm probably not going to end up building a lot of these. And I was collecting them just because I was like, I'm going to try and get every DC like Batman version of this, and then I was expanding and getting the occasional other item. Like I've got the Mandalorian, the Razor Crest, not the big UCS one they just released, but the one before that. I've got the original the Nintendo Entertainment System. I've got a lot of the Nintendo actual sets as well. So I expanded my Lego sets eventually to the point where I was never going to go back and build them all. And even if I did, I don't have the space. We were talking about space before being a premium.
Yeah.
I don't have the space to display them. So I've actually culled down a big chunk of my Lego collection, which is literally sitting in a pile behind the computer that you can't see off screen, ready to sell. And I've currently been just selling that off bit by bit, so I can finally get rid of that collection and then get it a bit more focused. But I have collection, Lego sets that I have kept for the collection. In particular, a lot of the Batman ones, like the big tumbler that they just brought out last year.
Yeah.
I've got the Batwing, and actually, just this week, I finally picked up, after not silly me not getting it when it was in production, the 1989 Batmobile Lego set. I finally
Nice.
picked that up, actually just a couple days ago, so I'm very happy to have that in the collection. But yeah, with your collection now, the way that it is, you've got, like you said, a lot of the NECA statues and everything as well. I noticed the gauntlets. You've actually got a lot of the gauntlets. You've got the large,
It,
the,
it's
the
the Marvel,
gold
yeah, the Marvel
gauntlet.
Legends series.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then you've got there's like the Iron Man version of that, I think, is it as well?
Yeah,
Or
it's the yeah, they do a lot of the it's all the 1-to-1 scale Marvel Legend series
it's
props. So
huge.
yeah, there's the gauntlets. I think I've got about 7 different helmets: Iron Man, Black Panther, Star Lord. And then they do a lot. I think there's a couple that I've not got yet, which I'm probably interested in. They do a really good Eye of Agamotto, Doctor Strange. It sits on a
Yes,
stand, and
yes, I've seen
you
that.
know,
Yeah.
I think there's a One Division. They do the Scarlet Witch crown. So there's a lot that they do if you wanted to kind of build up your collection and then incorporate props. And it's even to this day, I think it's one of my most liked social media post is when I took all my statues out of my cabinets and I put all of my Marvel's Legend props into my cabinets. And
Mm,
because normally they're just within shelves within the collection, but
hmm.
when I pull them all together to have a single shot, it looked fantastic having them together. There's a shield there, there's Stormbreaker, there's the Hammer Mjolnir, and it looked fantastic having them all together. But again, space is that premium. I just don't have the capacity to keep them all displayed together.
Yeah, yeah. Another thing that I actually wanted to discuss during here as well as you collecting pop vinyls, you have been spending a lot of time in your past giving back to the community and actually, I guess, making new collectors potentially. Do you want to tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I've reached a very fortunate position in my life whereby I was I was in my house, I had my son, I was comfortable in my job, and I've just reached a point whereby I just felt I wanted to do something else. So having a son myself, there was this kind of just inside kind of swelled feeling of well, my son is fortunate because of kind of of how we bring him up, but not everyone is as fortunate. So what I wanted to do is try and do something that might help and benefit children maybe who are in hospital or are sick, who maybe are who might just need a little bit of a pick me up at a difficult time. And so that's kind of where Pop Nightingale was born. In that I decided that I wanted to, and to be honest with you, it's something that I tried to do probably about a year before, and I didn't get a lot of traction from it. I did a local donation where I put on my social media, about sending donations, either the individuals themselves or to myself,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I ended up doing a donation, but nothing really kind of came of it, and it only kind of spiraled into something probably about the August of the following year, where I approached a colleague who helped me to set it up, and we started doing some fundraising within the Funko groups that I kind of frequent. We established Pop Nightingale as the name, again a play on the pop vinyls, and then Florence Nightingale for the from the hospital kind of the help side of things. And then we started to generate some funds, and from that we then everything seemed to kind of spiral in a very positive way. We started to engage with certain retailers. We engaged with a company called Pop Figures. If you're not aware of them, I would definitely say check them out. Because they are a fantastic company, and the owner of the company helped Pop Nightingale immensely, just in his sheer generosity of wanting to support with no ulterior motives. There was no kind of request for publicity. There was nothing like that. It
I'll
was
make
just
sure to
simply a
put
case.
a link in the description so that
Yeah,
people can check them out as well.
yeah, absolutely. And they did that, and he did that specifically just because he is a genuinely nice guy and he wanted to do something nice. So we were able to, we did some fundraisers, we generated funds, and then from that, we were able to buy pop figures from pop figures at crazy, crazy reduced rates that you would never get unless you had that kind of relationship. Um,
Mm.
and so in the first year, I think we donated, I want to say we donated probably just under 2,000 pops to
Wow.
about eight or nine different hospitals. So
Wow.
we reached out to hospitals and we contacted hospitals, and again, overall, generally it was very, very positive. Children's wards were very happy to receive the items. The following year, unfortunately, COVID hit, and then it became very difficult. So some of
Yeah.
the challenges, some of the logistical challenges, then were there. Some hospitals didn't want to receive items. Others we could only donate to
Yeah.
reception, and then they would take them in. Which is, it is what it is. It's not a big problem. But then over the next year, again, it grew really well. We did more fundraisers. Word of mouth got out. Um, and at our peak, we actually even engaged directly with Funko. I reached out to Brian Mariotti and Funko, who I've actually spoken to
Oh, nice.
via email a couple of times before. Yeah, many, many, many years ago, I sent Brian an email, and he very kindly responded back, commented on my collection, and it was lovely. It was just a lovely personal gesture that he didn't need to do, and it was very nice. Um,
Perfect.
so I thought, because Pop Nightingale was in at that point in full flow, I thought, well, why not? Why not? So I clicked reply to that email, and I sent him an email with some links. And then within, I think it was about half an hour of sending the email, I'd had an email from the head of comms in Funko Europe, talking about the fact that he'd been forwarded on an email and he wanted to have a discussion. And then before I knew it, I was on a Teams call with Funko Europe, and they were providing a donation to us, which was, again, it was unbelievable, just to, because again, I'm sure the Funko probably get, a lot of people reaching out to them asking for things. So I felt very kind of flattered, and very kind of humbled that they would take the time to look at what we've done, and to accept that what we're doing is a good thing, and they wanted to be involved in it. So yeah, so Pop Nightingale ran for about 18 months. It did reach its kind of natural conclusion in Jan Feb of this year, and that's just primarily because logistically it became such a large kind of beast to tame.
Mm.
We tapped into so many local hospitals. The In order for us to donate to other hospitals that outside of our kind of geographical scope was so much of a challenge. Sourcing pops and sourcing the funding was becoming increasingly difficult.
Mm.
And then also, because of so many other factors, it was just getting very difficult. So I think the way that I look at it is that, I'm very much in the view that it's something that I am hugely, hugely proud of.
As
It's
it should
something that
be.
I create. Yeah, I created it from scratch. I was supported by some fantastic people, name dropping particularly Natalie, who is kind of my left arm within the organization. We brought on a couple of other people towards the end, but Natalie was with me pretty much from the beginning, and I couldn't have done it without her. So from the beginning, we had a clear vision. We knew what we wanted to do, and with a massive amount of hard work and a massive amount of support from individuals, from companies, we were able to donate just under 8,000 items to over 40 hospitals,
Wow.
children's hospices, special schools, that
Wow.
provide specialist care and support. So it's something that it's something that will last with me for a long time. That I was able to be involved in that, and hopefully touch the lives of children in a positive way, even if it is just for that 18-month spell. So yeah, it's something that I am hugely proud of.
Well, I mean, I'm a big believer in putting positivity out into the world, and that a lot of it will come back to you. So I think that's wonderful that you've done that, and that you've 8,000 items is just, it's huge. It's phenomenal. Like, we talk about
Yeah.
your collection being around 1,500 plus pieces. Your Funko Pops being over 1,000. People like that so much. Just, I'm just trying to wrap my head around what 8,000 pop vinyls would look like if you were, and the amount of smiles that they would have potentially brought to different children and families, who,
Exactly.
the whole families as well, who might have seen this act of kindness and just been, honestly, it touches me that just thinking about. restoring faith in humanity to some people as well.
And yeah, and it's it's hard sometimes because we've had even now in my office as we set up as we go through the renovations and I set up my new office. I've got various letters that I plan to frame of it's memories of me of the work that we did. And some of these things I've been unable to share on social media because of from a privacy point of view, where we've had photos of children
Mhm,
sent to
mhm.
us by the parents who they've said, we wanted to say thank you to you. We don't want it to be on social media, but we wanted to say thank you. So it's a hard one for us because obviously, from my point of view, I collect these items, I collect these funds, and we do it, with there's no fees, there's no admin fees, there's no profit, there's nothing in it for us other than the fact that we simply want to be a conduit of getting an item into the hands of a child who's maybe in hospital at Christmas, who may or may not receive a present at Christmas, and we just simply wanted to try and raise a few smiles of those people in that kind of situation. So to get some of those letters and that recognition, and some of the ones we have been able to share, and we shared on our website when the website was up, so that we're as transparent as we can about the work that's being done. And we've had hospitals writing us letters, but it's massively touching. And I won't lie, there's times when I've opened a letter and it's literally brought me to tears just seeing a child lying in a bed. We're holding a Funko Pop with a massive smile on the face, and even now, as I'm
Mm,
saying that, I can feel that feeling in my chest.
yeah,
That's something that I will forever be proud of. The fact that I've been able to do that.
I'm almost getting a little choked up just thinking about that. I Yeah, it's there's a lot of people out there who families are going through things and they lose loved ones or they have loved ones that are sick and the families have to make a lot of sacrifices for those people. I've seen it personally. I know a lot of people who've been affected by that, and just having someone like yourself go out and do good in the community and do that. And I hope that this story can serve as inspiration to other people who may want to do the same thing.
Absolutely.
Because that's what we need in the world, right? More kindness and more Funko Pops. Let's go back. Let's go back to some positivity. Uh, is there any Funko Pops you're looking for at the moment in new releases that you're looking forward to get? I have to pivot
I
because I'm
think.
probably going to start crying if we keep talking about this. I'm sorry.
No, I think it's what do I want? What's on my want list? There's a lot of pops that I would want. The ones that probably would probably raise an eyebrow because I think it's very much a it's like chromes. I think there's that thing within the community that chromes are the Marmite of the collecting community. Chromes and the wood effects and the art series. They're very much the kind of the Marmite. I think you either love them or you hate them. And for me, the one thing that I think at some point I do want to try and get more of. I have one right now. Is I'm a big Freddy Funko collector. I do love my Freddy Funkos. Again, Freddy's a little bit of a he can be a bit of a Marmite where people say, well, he's just the mascot. Why do you? But me personally, I love him. That was my mission to get a Freddy when I first started collecting. I got one.
Yeah,
I'm now up to maybe about 50 or so, and I've got a Freddy art series now. I've got the art series collection of Batman. I love that collection.
I've
I
got
don't
them
have all
sitting
the
on
art.
top of my Billy bookcase to my left, right here, actually.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have all the art series. It's not a case that I go out and collect all the art series. But again, certain lines I really like, and if I like the look of them, then I'll get them. And I've got the. I think they were in the box of fun last year, not the one that's just gone. It was last year's box of fun, the art series Freddy's.
Yeah,
I think there's about 7 of them, and I've got one, and I really really like them. And I think I had an opportunity to pull the trigger on a batch of them that I didn't at the time. And then now I'm looking at them, the price is creeping up a little bit more. So I need to see. There's always financial decisions that need to be made. Of do we trade something off, or we just got to wait for the opportunity for things to come available.
well, if you are going to be culling down your collection, I'm sure you could probably make a few dollars back to purchase those new items.
Uh, hopefully, that's the plan.
Yeah, yeah. I know the box of fun you're talking about. One of the old items from a previous box of fun that I'd like to eventually add to my own collection actually is the person that you were talking about before. I'm pretty sure it was a double pack that they did of Brian and Mike, the two of them. I think it may
Yes.
have been when they did and I think it actually might have been that series because they were in the uniforms, almost like announcer uniforms, because of the Olympics series. I think it was to do with the Olympics, and I thought that was a really cool set, seeing the two of them together. Although I wouldn't mind getting the Funko soda that they had of Brian. I think there's one with Brian. He's holding Huckleberry as well.
Yeah, well. I think he's a massive Hanna Barbera fan, isn't he? So you see
Yeah.
that a lot on his social media. But no, I know which double pack you mean. I think I've got that. I managed to pick that double pack up. I think I actually even picked it up from Pop Figures.
All right.
So that yeah. So and then they did the making of I think it was the making of fun, which had the gold DVD in the box as well,
Yep,
which
yep.
is yeah. So I've got a couple of those. I'm actually, funny enough, I'm actually currently waiting on a delivery from Funko Europe because I was fortunate enough in September to be recognized by them as Fan of the Month for September.
Oh.
So they featured me on social media. So and they've told me that within the next 30 days, which I'm pretty much about 30 days now. So hopefully it's any day now. I'm waiting on a parcel from them that should have what would become one of my Grail items, a social media Freddy. So
I was going
super
to ask
stoked for that.
you about that because I was going to say they did social media Freddy's where you fortunate enough to get one, but yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so think yeah, I've always wanted one, and again I always try and tag them in, and try and see if I can get one somehow. But yeah, I was managed to be picked in September Fan of the Month, so very lucky, very fortunate.
Yeah, yeah. Well, look, if Funko ever decides they want to send some stuff to Australia, I'm always keen. I'd always be happy to get a care package.
Yeah.
Look, I think that this has been a great conversation and I love your collection. I think more people should go and follow your page, follow your collection, follow the journey of the collector's cave getting put together, and see it evolve into whatever it's going to be. And I'm sure this is version 3. I look forward to seeing what it turns out to be and what version 4 might be in the future as well.
Yeah, no, well, it's been an absolute pleasure to be here and to talk to you, and and thank you very much, and hopefully, your listeners have enjoyed it, and yeah, by all means, check it out. It's a journey that I'm on. It's a journey that's going to take now, it's going to take a number of weeks, months, just to get myself to a point of being set up, and then after that, the real fun of filling it up even more. But I've got some packages that have been stored up for the last 6 months. I've got some fantastic Mandalorian stuff to unbox. So, if you're a fan of Batman or Marvel or Mandalorian, Star Wars, hopefully there's a little bit of something for everyone in there. So yeah, come along and check it out.
And with that, do you want to tell people where they can find you on social media?
Yeah, my main presence is Instagram. So I'm UK Pop Collector on Instagram. I do have a presence on Facebook and Twitter, but again, I think my core audience is very much on Instagram. So yeah, UK Pop Collector. Come and check it out.
And I'll be sure to share the link to that and to Pop Figures that you mentioned before as well. I'll make sure that I get the links to that as well. Mate, Paul, thank you very much for being on the show. It's been a pleasure having you here. And yeah, keep the collection going, keep the good vibes going, and I look forward to seeing more of your collection in the future.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you. Take care.
If you liked the episode, please consider following or subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also join me on Instagram at Collecting Heroes, where you can see photos of the collections of the people that I'm talking to, as well as some of my own.